My name is Daniel, and until recently, I thought I understood what stability meant. In 36, I work as an electrician in a small town near the coast, and for most of my adult life, I believed that ordinary was good. I didn't want luxury. I didn't dream of fame. I just wanted peace, family dinners, and someone to come home to. 4 years. That someone was my wife, Emma. We met when we were in our mid-20s. She was working at a local coffee shop, saving up for college, and I was fixing some wiring in the back room one day when we started talking. I remember how she laughed at something stupid I said about burnt coffee and broken cables. And I knew right away that I wanted to see that laugh again. It wasn't fireworks or fate, just something that felt calm and right. We got married 3 years later. Nothing fancy, a small ceremony with family and a few close friends. Life after that was simple. We rented a small house, got a dog, and spent weekends fixing up the place. Emma worked at the local library, and I took whatever electrical jobs came my way. We weren't rich, but we were content. At least I thought we were. About a year ago, she mentioned an old acquaintance of hers, a guy named Mark. He had been a mutual friend back when she worked at the COF. Apparently, had become a pilot, traveling between cities and sometimes stopping by to visit friends when he was in town. At first, I didn't think much of it. He seemed friendly enough. He came over once or twice when he was around, told stories about airports, late-night flights, and strange passengers. He had that kind of confidence that people who travel often seem to have, always smiling, always full of stories. I didn't notice it then, but Emma's eyes lit up differently when he talked. I told myself it was just admiration, or maybe nostalgia. You don't expect something bad to come from people you know, from people you invite into your home. I trusted her, and I trusted him. I didn't see the small changes, the longer messages, the sudden excuses to go out, the way she started paying more attention to her appearance when he was in town. At the time, I thought I was just imagining things. I was busy with work, too busy, maybe. When you're trying to build something solid for your future, you often forget to check if the foundation underneath is cracking. I started noticing the small things first, the kind of things you can't really point to without sounding paranoid. Emma began locking her phone, something she had never done before. When I'd ask who she was texting, she'd smile and say, "Just my sister," or one of the girls from the library. I wanted to believe her, and for a while, I did. But something in her tone had changed. That easy openness we used to have was slowly being replaced by a strange kind of distance. I tried to tell myself it was just life getting in the way. People change, routines shift, and after years together, maybe we were just going through one of those quiet, disconnected phases. I thought if I worked a little less, maybe we'd have more time together. But when I came home early one afternoon, she wasn't there. She said later she had gone shopping, but there were no bags, no new clothes, nothing. It was such a small thing, yet it left a mark. Then there was Mark again. He started showing up in stories more often. She'd mentioned his name casually, the way you talk about a friend. Mark said this funny thing the other day, or Mark showed me a picture from his last flight. I did nod and smile, trying not to seem jealous, but deep down, I could feel something twisting inside me. It wasn't anger yet, just a slow, creeping unease. One evening, I was fixing the lights in our hallway when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at it without thinking, just a reflex. I saw his name. A message preview flashed for a second. "Wish you were here tonight." My heart stopped. It was like everything around me froze. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, unsure what to do. I didn't open it, didn't touch the phone. I just walked away, pretending I hadn't seen anything. That night, I barely slept. I kept asking myself if there was an innocent explanation. Maybe it was a joke, or maybe I'd misread it. But deep down, I knew. You can feel when something breaks between two people, even if no one says it out loud. A few days later, I asked her directly, "Are you and Mark close?" She laughed. That nervous kind of laugh people make when they're trying too hard to sound casual. "Don't be silly," she said. "He's just a friend." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But her eyes didn't meet mine when she said it. And for the first time in our marriage, I realized I didn't recognize the woman sitting in front of me. After that night, everything between us started to feel slightly off. Like the air had shifted in the room, but no one wanted to admit it. I still tried to go on as if things were normal, making breakfast, fixing small things around the house, asking how her day was. But her answers were shorter, her attention was somewhere else. When I'd speak, sometimes she'd smile faintly but not really listen. It's strange how you can live with someone and still feel completely alone. One evening, I came home to find her sitting outside on the porch, staring at her phone. She quickly turned it face down when she saw me. I remember that little flicker of guilt in her eyes, the one she tried to hide with a smile. "Hey," she said softly, "you're home early." "I finished a job sooner than I thought," I replied. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," she said, "just tired." But she wasn't tired. She was restless. Always checking the time, always waiting for something or someone. I wanted to ask again, to confront her, but the words stuck in my throat. I didn't want to be that husband, the suspicious one, the paranoid one. So instead, I tried harder. I cooked dinner, I brought her flowers, I suggested we take a small trip for the weekend. She said she was busy. Every excuse felt like another quiet rejection. One night, she told me Mark was flying into town again. "He's meeting some friends for dinner," she said. "I might go if you don't mind." I smiled and said, "Sure." But inside, something broke a little. She left around 7. I sat on the couch, the TV on but my mind far away. Round midnight, I heard her car pull up. She came in quietly, took off her shoes, and went straight to the shower. I could smell a faint trace of someone else's cologne, not mine. When she got into bed, I pretended to be asleep. I listened to her breathing next to me, slow and even, and for the first time since we got married. I didn't reach out to hold her. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly love had turned into silence. The next morning, she acted normal, making coffee, asking if I wanted toast, smiling like nothing had happened. I watched her move around the kitchen and thought, does she know that I know? Or does she think I'm still blind enough not to see it? I didn't confront her that day. I didn't have the courage yet. I just went to work and tried to focus on the noise of drills and wires, instead of the noise in my head. But no matter how much I tried to bury it, one truth kept coming back. Something was happening between them, and pretending not to see it wouldn't make it go away. A week passed, and everything felt heavier. The air in the house, the silences between us, even the smallest conversations carried an edge. We were both pretending, each in our own way, her pretending that nothing was wrong, and me pretending that I didn't already know the truth. It's strange how much effort it takes to hold up a lie, even when you're not the one telling it. I started spending more time outside. I'd take extra shifts, linger at work after hours, or drive around town just to avoid coming home too early. When I did come back, she had already been in her pajamas, watching TV or scrolling through her phone. The warmth that used to fill our evenings was gone, replaced by something colder, quieter. One night, I came home later than usual and found her on a video call. She didn't hear me at first. I stood in the hallway, half in the shadows, listening. I couldn't see the screen clearly, but I knew that voice, Mark's. She was smiling, tucking her hair behind her ear the way she used to do when she was nervous around me. Her voice was soft, and though I couldn't make out the words, the tone said enough. It wasn't the way you talk to a friend. When she noticed me standing there, she jumped slightly and ended the call. "Hey," she said too quickly, "you scared me. I was just talking to a friend." "I heard," I said quietly. Her eyes darted away for a second before she forced a smile. "Don't make that face, Daniel. It's nothing." But the problem was, it wasn't nothing, and we both knew it. That night, I went for a walk instead of staying in bed. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you think too much. I walked down past the park, past the little bakery that was closed for the night, and I realized I didn't even know what I wanted anymore. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to fight. I just wanted my life back. The one that existed before suspicion became a daily routine. When I got home, she was asleep, or maybe pretending to be. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while, just looking at her. I wanted to shake her awake and ask why. Why risk everything we built? Why him, of all people? But I didn't. I just lay down beside her and stared into the dark. The next morning, she was unusually cheerful. She made breakfast, kissed me on the cheek, and said, "You've been so quiet lately. Everything okay?" I wanted to tell her no, that nothing was okay, that her secret was sitting between us like a ghost. But instead, I said, "Yeah, just tired." And that was the truth. I was tired. Tired of guessing, tired of pretending, tired of being the only one still fighting for something that was already slipping away. A few days later, I decided I couldn't keep living in that fog of silence anymore. I needed clarity, even if it hurt. You can't fix something if the other person has already moved on in their heart, and deep down, I suspected Emma had. Still, I wanted to know for sure. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was all just my imagination running wild. That Friday, she told me Mark had another flight into town. She mentioned it casually, like it was nothing. saying she might meet him for coffee if she had time. I nodded, pretending it didn't bother me, but inside, everything twisted again. I told her I'd be working late that night, and for once, that lie felt justified. I stayed close to home, parked down the street after sunset. I hated myself for turning into the kind of person who spies, who checks, who doubts. But love makes you do things you swore you'd never do. Around 8, I saw her car pull out of the driveway. She was dressed nicer than usual, hair done, perfume I hadn't smelled in months. She wasn't going to just coffee. I followed from a distance, feeling my chest tighten with every red light. She drove to a quiet restaurant on the edge of town. I parked far away, just close enough to see her walk inside. A few minutes later, I saw him, Mark. Tall, confident, that same easy smile. He greeted her with a hug that lasted too long, too familiar. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, watching through the windshield as they laughed, as she leaned in to listen to him the way she used to with me. For a moment, I thought about storming in, demanding answers, making a scene, but what good would that do? The truth was already there in front of me, clearer than any words she could say. I drove home alone. I don't even remember the road, just the feeling, that hollow, aching emptiness that follows when the person you love becomes a stranger. When she came home later that night, she didn't know I'd seen them. She kissed me goodnight as if nothing had happened. And I let her. Not because I forgave her, not because I was weak, but because I needed one more night to think, to decide if I still had anything left to fight for, or if this was where our story quietly ended. That night, lying next to her, I realized something that scared me more than betrayal itself. I still loved her. Even after everything. The next morning, I woke up before her. For a few minutes, I just watched her sleep. She looked peaceful, maybe even happy, and for some reason that hurt more than anything else. I kept thinking about the night before, about that restaurant, about how easily she smiled with him. It felt like I was watching someone else's wife, not mine. I made coffee and sat by the window, staring at the empty street outside. I didn't know what to do. Confronting her would mean shattering whatever was left of the illusion we were living in, but pretending everything was fine felt impossible. I was somewhere in between, too hurt to ignore it, too tired to fight. When she finally came into the kitchen, she smiled like it was any other morning. "You're up early," she said, pouring herself a cup. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. She nodded but didn't ask why. That used to bother me, how she stopped asking about what was on my mind. But now, it just confirmed what I already knew. She didn't want to know, because she didn't want to face it either. Around noon, she said she needed to run a few errands. I didn't ask where. I just nodded. As she left, I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the mirror, adjusting her hair, checking her lipstick. I knew she wasn't going grocery shopping. For hours, I sat in silence. The house felt like a museum of memories, every room still holding traces of who we used to be. The couch where we watched movies, the table where we celebrated anniversaries, the hallway where we argued and made up again. It all felt like it belonged to another lifetime. In the afternoon, I finally called my friend, Ethan. As one of those people who listens more than he talks. The kind of friend you can trust when your world starts to fall apart. I told him everything. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "You already know, Dan. You just don't want to believe it." "I saw them," I admitted. "Last night. Together?" There was a long pause on the line. "I'm sorry, man," he said softly. "That's not something you can unsee." I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just sat there, holding the phone, feeling a strange numbness spreading through me. That evening, when she came home, I didn't ask where she had been. I couldn't. The words felt useless. She kissed me on the cheek again, the same mechanical gesture as always, and went upstairs. I stayed on the couch, staring at the floor, feeling like a ghost in my own house. And that's when I realized something. Silence wasn't protecting us anymore. It was killing us. One of us had to say it out loud, and I knew it had to be me. That night, I finally decided I couldn't keep living in denial. The truth had been sitting between us for too long, poisoning everything we had left. I waited until she came downstairs, wearing her usual soft sweater, her hair still damp from a shower. She looked calm, almost too calm, and for a second, I almost lost my nerve. "Emma," I said quietly, "we need to talk." She froze a little, just a fraction of a second, but I saw it. That tiny flicker of fear, or guilt, or both. "Okay," she said, trying to sound casual. "What about?" I took a deep breath. "About you and Mark." She didn't answer right away. She just looked down at her hands, twisting the edge of her sleeve. What about him? Don't do that, I said. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. I saw you two last night. Her eyes snapped up, wide, shocked, not because she was innocent, but because she hadn't expected me to actually say it. You followed me? She asked, her voice trembling with something between anger and shame. Yes, I said simply. I had to. You weren't telling me the truth. The room went silent. For a long time, she just stared at me. Then she sighed, looked away, and said quietly, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Those words, they hit harder than I expected. Not because of what she said, but because it sounded like an admission. Like everything I feared had just been confirmed. How long? I asked, barely recognizing my own voice. She hesitated. A few months, she whispered. It just happened. I don't even know how. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. You don't know how. Emma, you made choices. You texted him, met him, lied to me. That doesn't just happen. Tears started to fill her eyes. I'm sorry, she said softly. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did, I said. You hurt me every time you looked me in the eye and told me everything was fine. For a while, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. I wanted to yell, to demand explanations, to make her feel what I was feeling, but instead, all I felt was exhaustion. Finally, I said, do you love him? She didn't answer right away. That silence told me more than any words could. I don't know, she finally whispered. I felt alive again. And I hadn't felt that way in a long time. Her honesty cut deeper than her lies ever did. I nodded slowly. Then maybe I've been holding on to something that isn't there anymore. She cried quietly, but I didn't comfort her. For the first time, I realized that maybe love isn't enough when trust is gone. That night, I slept on the couch. Neither of us said goodnight. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face when she said it. I felt alive again. Those words echoed in my head like a broken record. I kept wondering when exactly she had stopped feeling alive with me. Was it when I started working too much? When I stopped noticing the small things? Or had it been fading for years without either of us admitting it? In the morning, the house was quiet. She didn't come downstairs right away, and I didn't go up. I sat at the table with a cold cup of coffee, staring at the wall, feeling like a stranger in my own home. The pictures on the shelf, vacations, birthdays, the wedding, they all felt like fragments of a life that no longer belonged to us. When she finally appeared, her eyes were red from crying. She sat across from me but didn't speak. The silence stretched between us, heavy and unbearable. I don't know what to say, she whispered finally. Then don't, I replied. I think we said enough. She looked down. Are you going to leave me? I didn't answer right away. The question itself felt strange. Leaving implied that there was still something left to leave, but the truth was, part of me felt like I'd already been gone for a long time. I don't know, I said honestly. I just know I can't keep living like this. She nodded slowly. I understand. There was no fight, no shouting, just two people sitting at a table, quietly acknowledging the death of something that once meant everything. After she left for work, I spent the whole day in silence. I fixed small things around the house just to keep my hands busy, a loose handle, a squeaky hinge, anything to avoid thinking. But the more I tried not to, the more the memories came flooding back. Her laugh in the morning, the way she'd hum while cooking, the way she used to fall asleep against my shoulder. That evening, she came home and found me packing a small bag. Where are you going? She asked quietly. I don't know yet, I said. Maybe to Athens for a few days. She didn't try to stop me. She just stood there, tears welling up again. Daniel, I'm sorry, she said. I really am. I know, I said, my voice low. But sometimes sorry isn't enough. As I walked out, the sun was setting. The house behind me felt smaller than ever, like it was shrinking into itself. I didn't look back. I couldn't. That night, I stayed at Ethan's place. He didn't ask questions, just handed me a beer and let me sit in silence. I didn't need words. I just needed to stop feeling like my whole life was unraveling. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Emma and I still had things left unsaid, things that couldn't be packed away or left behind. And sooner or later, I'd have to face them. Ethan let me stay in his spare room for a few days. It wasn't much, a small bed, a window that overlooked his backyard, the distant hum of cars from the main road, but it was quiet, and that was exactly what I needed. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe without feeling that constant weight on my chest. He didn't pry, which I appreciated. Every evening we'd sit on his porch, share a drink, and talk about anything except my marriage. It was his way of giving me space without making me feel alone. Sometimes we'd talk about work, old friends, or how the town had changed in years. Other times, we'd just sit in silence, letting the sound of crickets fill the air. But the silence inside me was louder. Even away from her, I couldn't stop thinking about Emma, about the look on her face when I walked out, about the way her voice trembled when she said sorry. A part of me hated her for what she did, but another part still wanted to understand why. People don't just wake up one morning and decide to betray the person they built a life with. There's always a reason, even if it's one you don't want to hear. On the third day, she called me. I saw her name flash on the screen, and for a long moment, I just stared at it. Finally, I answered. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey." There was a pause. "Are you okay?" I almost laughed. "I don't really know what that means anymore." She sighed softly. "I miss you." The words hung in the air. I didn't know what to do with them. "You miss me?" I repeated slowly. "Or you miss not feeling guilty?" She didn't answer right away. Then, in a shaky voice, she said, "Both, I guess." For a second, I wanted to hang up to protect whatever little strength I had left. But instead, I asked, "Why him, Emma? Out of everyone, why him?" Her voice broke a little. "He was just there. You were always busy, always tired. I felt invisible, and he made me feel seen again. It's not an excuse, I know that. But it's the truth." I closed my eyes, trying to process her words. "I was working so we could have a life together," I said quietly. "You could have talked to me instead of." I stopped myself before finishing. There was no point in reliving it again. "I know," she whispered, "and I hate myself for it." Neither of us spoke for a while. I could hear her breathing softly through the phone. Finally, I said, "I don't know what happens next." "Me neither," she said, "but I don't want this to be the end." When the call ended, I sat there in the dark, phone still in my hand, wondering if love could really survive something like this, or if sometimes forgiveness just isn't enough to rebuild what's already gone. The morning after that call, I woke up with a strange heaviness in my chest, not quite pain, but not peace either. I sat by the window in Ethan's spare room, watching the slow drizzle outside, and for the first time in a long while, I realized how quiet life can feel when you stop pretending everything is fine. Emma texted me later that morning. "Can we talk in person?" I stared at the message for a while before replying with a simple "okay." That afternoon, I drove back to the house. It felt different stepping inside. The air smelled faintly of her perfume, and everything was exactly as I'd left it, except it didn't feel like my home anymore. She was sitting at the kitchen table, hands clasped together, eyes swollen like she hadn't slept. "Thanks for coming," she said softly. I nodded and sat down across from her. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was thick, but not angry, just tired. "I've been thinking a lot," she began. "About everything. About us." "Me too," I said quietly. She looked down, twisting the ring on her finger. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve that. But I need you to know it wasn't just about Mark. It was about how lost I felt and how far apart we'd grown. I made a terrible choice, but it wasn't because I stopped loving you." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But I'd spent weeks trying to understand how love and betrayal could exist in the same breath, and I still didn't have an answer. "I get it," I said finally. "I wasn't perfect either. I got too focused on work. I thought providing was the same as loving. Maybe I stopped showing you that you mattered." Her eyes filled with tears. "You did love me, Daniel. I just didn't know how to see it anymore." We sat there for a long time, both quiet, both broken in our own ways. I wanted to reach out, but something held me back, maybe pride, maybe pain, maybe the simple truth that once trust is shattered, love alone can't hold it together. "Finally," she said, "has gone." I ended it. "Before you even saw us that night, I knew I couldn't keep doing it, but I didn't know how to tell you." Her words hit me like a wave, not of relief, but confusion. "You ended it," I repeated. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was ashamed," she said, "and scared of losing you completely." I leaned back in my chair, staring at her, this woman I'd shared nearly a decade with, now a stranger who still knew everything about me. "You already lost me the moment you chose him," I said softly. She nodded slowly, tears spilling over. "I know. We didn't yell. We didn't argue. It was quieter than I expected, like two people standing in the ashes of what used to be their life, realizing there's nothing left to save. When I left that day, she didn't ask me to stay, and I didn't ask her to come with me. There were no promises, no goodbyes, just silence, the kind that tells you something has truly ended. But as I drove away, I couldn't shake one thought. Endings aren't always sudden. Sometimes they happen slowly, one silence at a time, until love just runs out of things to say. I spent the next few weeks drifting through days that all felt the same. I went back to work, though my heart wasn't in it. The sound of drills, the hum of electricity, the smell of metal, it all blurred together. Just noise to fill the silence I didn't know how to face. When coworkers asked how I was doing, I gave the usual answer, I'm fine. It was easier than explaining the truth, that I didn't even know who I was without her anymore. Ethan checked in often, sometimes dragging me out for a beer or a game of pool just to make sure I didn't lock myself away completely. I appreciated it, even if I barely talked. He knew I was still caught somewhere between anger and grief, two emotions that never seemed to take turns but lived together in me. At night, I'd catch myself scrolling through old photos on my phone, our wedding, our first trip together, birthdays, quiet dinners. Every image felt like proof of another life, one that had ended without a proper goodbye. I deleted some, but most I couldn't. I wasn't ready to erase her completely, even if I told myself I should. Emma called once or twice during that time. I didn't pick up. I couldn't yet. I knew if I heard her voice, some part of me would want to go back to the comfort, the familiarity, even the pain. And I wasn't ready to decide if that was what I really wanted. One evening, as I sat outside watching the sun go down, Ethan joined me. He handed me a beer and said, "You know, man, you don't have to rush to figure it all out." I nodded. Feels like everything stopped, though. Like my life's just waiting. He took a sip, then said, "Maybe that's what you need, time to just let it hurt. To let the pieces settle before you decide which ones are worth picking back up." I thought about that a lot after he went inside. I realized I'd been trying to skip the part where you actually feel the loss. I wanted to move on, to fix things, to fill the emptiness. But maybe some pain isn't meant to be fixed right away. Maybe you have to sit with it, learn from it. Let it change you before you can even think about what comes next. That night, I finally picked up my phone and sent Emma a message, the first in weeks. It said only, "I need time. Please don't contact me for a while. Oh, reach out when I'm ready." She replied a few minutes later, "I understand." No pleading. No long explanations, just that, and somehow, that simple message felt like the first bit of honesty we'd shared in months. As I put the phone down, I realized I wasn't angry anymore, not really, just sad. But beneath the sadness, there was something else beginning to grow, a quiet sense that maybe, just maybe, I could still find myself again. Time started moving differently after that. Days didn't feel as heavy, even though the ache was still there, lingering in quiet moments, in the smell of morning coffee, in the empty space on the couch where she used to sit, in the way the house still carried her presence. But it wasn't unbearable anymore. It had softened into something I could live with. I kept myself busy. Work helped. Fixing things, building things, there was something grounding about it. You could take something broken and make it work again. Simple. Predictable. Unlike people. On weekends, I'd take long drives just to clear my head. Sometimes I'd end up by the lake on the edge of town. It was a place Emma and I used to go when we first started dating back, when everything still felt easy. The water looked the same, but I didn't. I'd sit there for hours, just thinking. One Saturday afternoon, while I was sitting by that lake, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Hey, Daniel. It's Mark." I froze for a second. My first instinct was to delete it, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But curiosity, or maybe stubbornness, made me read on. I know I have no right to reach out. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't think about what I was doing, about who I was hurting. I've thought about it every day since. "You didn't deserve that, man." I stared at the message for a long time. A part of me wanted to fire back something cruel, something that would make him feel even a fraction of what I'd felt. But another part, the quieter one, just felt tired. I'd carried enough anger. I didn't want to keep holding it. So I replied, "Thanks for saying that. I don't hate you. I just hope you don't do that to anyone else." He didn't respond, and I didn't expect him to. But as I set the phone down, I realized that for the first time, the thought of him didn't make my blood boil. It was strange. Forgiveness wasn't something I planned. It just happened quietly, like a door closing behind me. That evening, I drove home and cleaned out the house, not just the physical mess, but the emotional one. I took down the photos, packed away the little reminders of what used to be, not to forget, but to make space. When I was done, I stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by empty shelves and boxes, and felt something I hadn't felt in months, peace. It wasn't the loud kind. It didn't erase the hurt or make the memories easier, but it was real. It was the kind that comes when you finally stop fighting the past and start making room for what's next, even if you don't know what that is yet. That night, I slept better than I had in a long time. No dreams, no restlessness, just quiet. And for once, that was enough. A few months passed. By then, the sharpness of everything had dulled. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the sleepless nights, they were still there, but they didn't control me anymore. I'd gotten used to the quiet rhythm of my new life. Work, home, sleep, repeat. It wasn't exciting, but it was steady, and steady felt safe. One morning, I ran into Emma at the grocery store. I had seen her since the day I walked out. She was standing in the produce aisle, holding a basket, looking almost exactly the same, just older somehow. Like the last few months had worn her down too. When she noticed me, she froze for a second before offering a small, unsure smile. "Hi," she said softly. "Hey," I replied. My voice came out steadier than I expected. There was an awkward pause. We were two people who used to know everything about each other, suddenly acting like strangers making small talk. "How have you been?" she asked. "I've been okay," I said. "Working a lot. Keeping busy." She nodded. "That's good." Then, after a moment, "You look better." "Yeah," I said, and smiled faintly. "Time does that, I guess." We stood there for a while, both trying to find something else to say. Finally, she said, "I've been going to therapy, trying to figure out why I did what I did." I looked at her for a moment. Her eyes weren't defensive or full of excuses, just tired honesty. "That's good," I said quietly. "We all have to face ourselves eventually." She nodded. "I just want you to know that I've learned a lot about myself, about how I hurt you, and am really sorry, Daniel. Not just for what happened, but for how I made you feel like you didn't matter. You did. You always did." There was a time when those words would have broken me, when I would have clung to them hoping they meant something could still be saved. But standing there, I realized something important. I had already moved past needing her apology. It still meant something, but it no longer defined me. "I appreciate that," I said. "I really do. I'm not angry anymore." She gave a small, sad smile. "I'm glad. You deserve peace." We talked a few more minutes about work, mutual friends, small ordinary things. It felt strange, but not painful. When we said goodbye, she reached out and gently touched my arm. "Take care of yourself, Daniel," she said. "You too, Emma." As I walked out of the store, I didn't look back. There was no dramatic ending, no longing, no regret, just quiet acceptance. The kind that comes when you finally stop trying to rewrite the past and start letting it be what it was. Driving home, I realized something else too. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means freeing yourself from the weight of what someone did to you. And that's what I'd finally done. That night, I sat on the porch, watching the sunset, feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time since everything fell apart, I wasn't haunted by what was lost. I was finally looking forward, even if I didn't know what waited ahead. Life has a strange way of rebuilding itself when you're not paying attention. One day you're standing in the wreckage, wondering how you'll ever move again, and the next, you're realizing you already have, one quiet step at a time. That's how it felt for me. Work started feeling normal again. I was showing up, not just physically but mentally. I'd laugh with the guys at lunch, take pride in what I built. There was a new project that demanded focus, and I threw myself into it. Not as a distraction this time, but because it felt good to create something lasting, something solid. Outside of work, I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I picked up running again, went fishing on weekends, spent more time with Ethan and his family. They treated me like I wasn't broken, like I was just me. That helped more than they'll ever know. Then one evening, I met someone new. Her name was Laura. She worked at a local bookstore. I stopped by one night looking for something to read, something different, something that didn't remind me of anything. She was behind the counter, reading a worn paperback, completely lost in it. When she looked up, she smiled, not forced, not polite, just real. "Looking for something specific?" she asked. "Not really," I said. "Just trying to find a story that makes sense." She laughed, this soft, easy laugh that made the air feel lighter. "Aren't we all?" We talked for a while. About books, about work, about how the town never really changed. There was no instant spark, no movie moment, just a quiet connection. Something gentle. When I left, she said, "Come back sometime. I'll have more stories for you." I did. Over the next few weeks, I found myself visiting the bookstore more often. Sometimes I bought something, sometimes I didn't. We'd talk about life, about mistakes, about how people aren't meant to stay stuck in their pain forever. She'd been through her own heartbreak, and somehow, that made her easy to talk to. One evening, as we were closing up, she said, "You know, people think healing is this big dramatic moment, but it's not. It's just little choices, every day, choosing to show up again." I nodded. "Yeah, I think I'm starting to understand that." She smiled and said, "Good, then you're already doing better than most." Driving home that night, I realized how different it felt, not like replacing what was lost, but like discovering something new about myself, that I could still feel something, still care, still hope. I wasn't in love, not yet, maybe not even close, but for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid of the idea. When I got home, I looked around my house, still quiet, still simple, and felt something I hadn't felt in over a year: gratitude, for the pain that had changed me, for the peace that had followed, for the chance to start over, however slowly. And maybe, I thought, that's what healing really is, not forgetting the past, but learning to live fully despite it. It's been almost a year now since everything fell apart. Sometimes I still catch myself thinking about it, about Emma, about that version of my life that doesn't exist anymore. But it doesn't hurt the way it used to. It's more like remembering a book I once loved but outgrew. I can look back on it fondly, even if I'll never reread it. Emma and I don't talk much anymore. Every now and then, we'll exchange a message on holidays or birthdays, just polite words. No bitterness. It's strange how the people can go from sharing everything to sharing almost nothing, and yet, it feels right that way. We had our time. We ended it, and we both found different paths. Laura and I see each other often now. Nothing serious yet, but there's an honesty between us that I never want to lose. We talk about everything, the good, the bad, the messy. She doesn't ask me to be anyone else, and I don't hide the scars. She once told me, "Scars just mean you healed where you were broken." I think about that a lot. Life has become quiet again, but not empty. Mornings start with coffee and sunlight instead of regret. I've learned to cook again, to enjoy my own company. I still go to the lake sometimes, but now it feels peaceful instead of lonely. The silence that used to haunt me has turned into something I actually look forward to: a space where I can breathe, think, just be. Looking back, I see things differently now. I used to believe betrayal destroyed everything, but maybe it just reveals what was already fragile. It forces you to rebuild, to confront who you are without the person you thought you needed. And in that rebuilding, you find out what truly matters. I don't hate Emma. I don't hate Mark. I don't even hate what happened anymore. Because without it, I wouldn't be here, standing on the other side of something that once felt impossible to survive. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that people change. Not because time heals everything, but because pain demands it. You either let it break you, or you let it shape you. I chose to let it shape me. Sometimes I still think about the man I was before all this, the one who thought love alone could keep everything together. I miss his simplicity, but not his blindness. Now I know that love isn't just about holding on. Sometimes it's about letting go with grace. As I sit here tonight, the sky turning gold outside my window, I feel something I never expected to feel again. Peace, real, steady peace. The kind that doesn't come from someone else, but from finally forgiving yourself. And maybe that's what life is, in the end, the long journey of losing, learning, and finding your way back home to yourself.